So the language that most people talk about the Latin Mass. The word Latin is what hits them in the face first.
Yep.
So like you said, people think of it as just the Novus Ordo in Latin.
Right.
Okay. Now, how did the Latin play? How does it play into your spirituality, and how did you find it when you came back? Did you find it difficult?
Right. I think I really loved it, honestly. Just so having somewhat of a background in Italian, it's the similar backing of a language, but I really liked this idea that you spoke to God in a different language. I mean, I think I was watching some trad movie where this priest is giving this monologue talking about how, when you're talking to God, you're not just talking to your neighbor, so you have this sacred ancient language that you uphold. And I mean, the ancient Jews did that, right? They had Hebrew as their dedicated temple language. So I really like that concept of just having this sort of ancient language that, I mean, it sounds really cool too. And it's like, I like praying in Latin. It sounds awesome. I think if people hear you praying in Latin, they're like, what are you doing? That's bizarre. So yeah, I really like learning, the office and prayers in Latin. And it was challenging, but it was, again, going back to that Peterson notion of like having a high bar. It was appealing of, okay, I'm going to sit down and actually try to memorize these prayers and try to look at declensions or look at what they're saying in this language. But I love that the liturgy was in Latin. I thought it was beautiful and, again, spoke to that notion that these people actually think they're talking to God. They're not just trying to make this worship service so they all get the feels and kind of feel nice about it. They're speaking in ancient language so that God hears it and that they're instantiating this traditional sort of feel with the language. So I absolutely love Latin. I still like doing my meal prayers in Latin. Like I definitely went deep on the Latin train and really enjoyed learning
Nice.
it.
So you say the office?
So I like to do compline every night at least, and sometimes prime, and I also have a full
talk to that because I get the feeling that a lot of us Catholics we don't really know the office unless unless you're priest or religious.
Right.
And the laity used to be much more involved in praying parts of the office at least.
Yeah, apparently that's what I've heard. Like the actual people used to do that. So I like the idea of just having set hours for doing prayers, and especially compline where it's right before I go to bed, and I think traditionally it would be 9:00, but depending on what I'm doing that day. But I like the notion of just having a prayer that everyone around the world is saying at a certain time that you're all kind of offering up together. Really like the Psalms and just kind of the alternating structure of how those work in a group. And I mean, so when I first started doing it, I would just sort of read it to myself because I had no idea what it was supposed to look like. And then when I got to St. Stephen's and was living in the formation house that I was currently living in, or was living in and then just moved out of, we had, sometimes 6 guys who would go and do compline before we went to bed. So you'd have 3 guys each side. You'd have a celebrant, a lector, and a cantor, and you can actually have the actual full office. And the first time we did that, I was just blown away. I mean, you have guys alternating in Latin chant, and you have kneeling and all those kind of ceremonial things.
Very monastic.
Yeah, it was definitely monastic, and it was again very appealing. That kind of masculine quality of just like having a structured ordered liturgy of the hours, if you will, but an actual set prayer time where you follow these sort of rubrics,
right,
and could meet those and could improve in them, and you're singing and you're trying to get your singing better, and all that was just really cool. But even at home, I just like the concept of having something where your psalms changing every day, but you still have your basic prayers. Most of them are fitting for the hour, and you have the Te Lucis and the compline, where you're talking about night things, and you're confessing at the end of the day, and you're doing an examination of conscience. I really was drawn to that notion of just having a set prayer time where you did the same thing every night, and it wasn't just how am I feeling today? It was just it's night, I'm doing this thing, even if I don't feel like it, I'm still doing it because I made this commitment and I want to do it, and that was definitely really appealing.
And the medieval aspect of it, I get the sense that it really appeals to young people, and maybe for people of a certain generation, it's like almost a dirty word, like medieval. Why would you why would you be interested in that?
Right. Yeah, I think that's definitely accurate, especially for like my parents' generation. It's that notion of an ancient practice was sort of washed away in the 60s, or was definitely spoken illy of. And I think a lot of people my age really want that, or at least are kind of trying to seek it, even if they don't know it.
Yeah.
They want some connection to their patrimony, or to their heritage, or to their traditions. And if they don't find that, I think they're just going to lose them.
Or they'll find it in Dungeons and Dragons or something.
Right, yeah, exactly. That's a good point.
That's probably an old reference, but through fantasy books.
Still play it, yeah. or movies or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They're shaped too. So I think we need that as humans.
And the modern world has been very good at kind of putting us into boxes and cages, and and it's gotten rid of that agricultural sense, that real rootedness that we all have, and that we all kind of feel like the medieval period had. And I think the liturgy really plays into it. Would you agree?
Sure. Yeah, I think so, absolutely. And again, it's like if you're in the modern world and you're trying to sort of find meaning outside of it, having a liturgy that's rooted in this tradition that you can go to every Sunday and sort of reconnect with, and sort of, I've sometimes heard Sunday referred to as like a kind of a pep talk before a big game, which I kind of like the imagery of, where it's, okay, my weekday when I'm outside of Mass, it's like I'm acting, right? I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing. I'm probably failing in them, or not doing them the best that I can. And then Sunday you have your liturgy, and it's like, all right, I'm talking to God. I'm trying to refocus my life and figure out, okay, what can I do better next week? Mm-hmm. So I think having that traditional sense in your liturgy that you can kind of reconnect with and just think about, all my ancestors successfully reproduced and got me to this point with these principles. Like, I got to make sure I'm following these principles, because if not, things are going to go wrong. So I think having that traditional sense to your liturgy really plays into that factor, and just how you live your life.
It's funny. You almost take an evolutionary tack with it. It's worked for so long.
That's a good point.
It's like it's been finely honed over the generations, and how are you going to mess with that?
Right. Yeah. And I've heard I forget who, maybe Edmund Burke or someone else, who said that a conservative is someone who they see a fence in a forest or somewhere, and they think, okay, why is this here? Or a liberal will see the fence and just rip it down immediately.
Yeah.
So I think having that sense of, okay, why are these doctrines, these liturgical actions, the way we structure our lives, why are these here, before ripping them down, is really, in essence, being part of what a traditionalist is. I mean, you're trying to figure out, why do people do this for so long? Right. And I think growing up, there was just no answer to those questions, and especially coming from like the intellectual side and hearing those questions be answered, and then seeing them every week in the liturgy, it's like, that's why. That's why these things are important, and you can kind of connect with your ancestors, or just the people who pass down those traditions.
So, like, what would you have advice for people who are kind of following along the same road as you, through like Jordan Peterson and the Dave Rubens and stuff, and maybe they're like, I've never been Catholic, I don't know why I should be interested in it. What did you find in Catholicism that really like drew you in?
Well, definitely that objective truth aspect, I think, is the biggest thing for people who are listening to Peterson or Rubin, because a lot of them are trying to talk to truth. They're sort of rejecting the relativism of the modern world. They're sort of pushing back against these notions that we can just kind of create our own values. And I don't think any other Christian denomination has that, like Catholicism does. Most of them are just kind of making it up as they go along. So I think if you're someone who's interested in the Christian faith, even from a Peterson perspective, looking at finding the church that has the oldest traditions that they can trace back to the actual living Christ is where you should start. I mean, it just made the most sense to me. I can't imagine listening to Peterson and then going and following sola scriptura, where it's like, okay, I'm just going to base my doctrines off of how I interpret the Bible. I mean, those two things just don't seem to square up. It's still very relativistic. How do you know that your interpretation is correct without a traditional backing, or without people who were actually around during the time of Christ and the apostles backing up what you believe? So I think that aspect was really appealing, of just having that tradition. And the other thing, too, was the actual liturgy being a sacrifice. I absolutely love that, because Peterson's huge on sacrifice. It's all about, like, in his conception of Christ as a myth, he always talks about the dying nature of the God, right? Of having this continual death and rebirth. So hearing that Mass is actually a sacrifice was really appealing. Right. And all the prayers in the Latin Mass too, where you have them speaking about the victim, the Immaculate Victim on the altar, and actually reading that in the Missal. When I first read that, it was a total connection to that Peterson notion of sacrifice that really drew me in.
Oh, wow.
Which I thought was really cool. And so whenever I read those prayers, I kind of harken back to that, because that was how I kind of first made that tie-in. But yeah, if you're looking for that representation of a sacrifice, I mean, you only really get that in Catholicism and Orthodoxy too, obviously, the valid sacraments. But
yeah, it's less of a head thing, and it's more of an integrated thing. Like, you realizing that we have a body, we have a head, we have an intellect, we have, needs as human beings, and it's all together in the Catholic religion. We're not taking one part of it and exaggerating it.
Yeah, and you're not trying to speak to objective truth while having doctrines that reject objective truth. I mean, you're having your faith and your reason all completely combined. I mean, I've heard people say that the great thing about being a Catholic is you don't have to check your reason at the door. I mean, it's a very reason-based religion,
Right.
which I think growing up I had no concept of, and I think most people who aren't Catholics might not have a concept of either. But a lot of these doctrines and dogmas are well thought out, very old, very traditional. I mean, based on objective truth, which is Christ.
Right.
So it's a very coherent, comprehensive religion, and it really informs your life. I mean, every aspect of your life is based around this belief system. And that was also really appealing too. And then you have it all culminate in this Sunday liturgy of the eternal representation of the sacrifice on Calvary. I mean, that's beautiful. And the music too. Also, if I think that was also a huge draw in
really?
having ancient chant and polyphony and just hearing objective beauty. Actually, hearing objective beauty in a liturgy was incredible. Because again, like the Rubin types and the Peterson types, they always talk about objective truth, goodness, and beauty. And as I was raised Catholic, I didn't get objective beauty. We got these kind of 60s-esque songs that just, you listen to them and they're saccharine. There's nothing really there. So you go hear a Palestrina Mass, watching a Latin Mass, and it blows you away. I mean, it's just gorgeous. Like, there's the most hardened atheist could go sit in a Latin Mass and listen to Palestrina and be moved. I mean, even if they think what's going on is ridiculous, once you hear that, it just blows you away.
Right.
It's pretty incredible.
There's just something transcendent about it that wasn't in the...
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It draws you outside of yourself. I mean, it's like Peterson has all these talks on beauty, and he says that real beauty it's transcendent. It draws you outside of your nature. Just it elevates you in a way.
Right.
And yeah, the Latin Mass music, when it's done well, certainly has that to it.
And I've heard the same thing also about the precision of the service itself, where it's not kind of slovenly or sloppy. It's almost military, and it's I do this, I turn, and like little things like the second Confiteor when the priest gives a little half turn. It's like I can't take my focus off the tabernacle, but yet I have to give a blessing. So I do this little half. It's like all purely thought out.
Oh yeah, I've actually described it before to other guys as like, it's these militaristic movements. I mean, that's a great word for it, because it is. I mean, it's so precise. And having lived in that house, I've gotten to serve. I mean, for months now, just serving every Sunday.
Right.
And when we train, I mean, it's very precise. It's like you're checking to make sure you're moving at the same time. You have these genuflections all in sync, and it's just that's very appealing to men. Just like seeing these people act out this liturgy in a precise way. I think people are kind of drawn to that. And
in our interview with Abby Johnson just last week, she mentioned that it was very, it struck her as very masculine.
Right.
Yeah, and she appreciated it on that level as a woman,
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
She felt like, they were up there doing their thing, like she said, I felt taken care of, and,
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think guys are going to be more attracted to that. I think it was Ottaviani at the Second Vatican Council who said that if they put this new Mass forward, it'll only be women and children left at the parish.
Oh, wow.
Which is true. I mean, especially growing up, I mean, most men, if they went to Mass, which most of them don't, they weren't the spiritual leaders of their household. They were just going because their wife liked it. And, as a Catholic guy, that you're called to lead your family and to be the spiritual leader. And most guys at the Latin Mass, they get that, and they have this liturgy that's instantiating that and reminding them of that, and they can actually be attracted to. So I think if you were in a very kind of lax, liberal Novus Ordo parish, what are you leading your family towards? There's not much there to really grasp. So yeah, I think having the liturgy that's very much calling and appealing to guys reminds them that, okay, this is a masculine liturgy. You're called to offer your sacrifice, and everyone is, but as a guy, you're called to sort of unite your sacrifice and then lead your family as well to what's going on the altar. Right. And guys are definitely attracted to that.
Yeah. So where do you see yourself going with this? Do you know yet? Or
Yeah, that's a great question. So like I said, I was in a formation house, which is sort of a pre-seminary house that is sort of connected to the Allentown Fraternity Parish. And had a couple of guys who were discerning vocations, one who just went to the seminary, just left to the seminary. But I've always felt I'd more have a marriage vocation, if you will.
Okay.
So, going to try to work on that for the next couple of years. And I got back into farming, surprisingly. So as I was converting, I sort of got out of that world because it was so tied to the pagan, or the sort of neo-pagan aspect that I have, and sort of left that for years. and then after moving down here, got connected to a traditional Catholic family who has an organic farm and make cheese and bread, and that was my primary profession, was cheese making.
So wow!
They were kind of looking for someone to help with their cheese making operation and make bread for them, and it was like, yeah, I've done all that, like sure. And after being around them for so long, I got that tie-in of the sort of agricultural sense with the traditional faith, and sort of saw how they could still be connected. Not that everyone has to be a farmer, but there's definitely a deep tie-in between those things.
Right.
So yeah, probably. So I just moved to that farm. They have sort of.
Oh wow! Okay.
So yeah, I guess just gonna keep working, trying to eventually lead a family.
Wow. Well, it's been delightful talking to you.
Yeah, you as well, buddy. It's been
and best of luck with everything.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys as well. The fraternity is doing excellent work, and it's
thank you.
I'm
new to this game, but I really don't believe in everything that the fraternity does. So.
Excellent as well. Great.
All right, take care.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the podcast. Like and subscribe to Te Iji Tour so that you can hear additional talks and interviews from the North American headquarters of the Priestly Fraternity of St. Peter. May God bless you.